In this week's episode, we talk about franchising, I do a rant about the Prosperity Doctrine, and we talk about drinking water. Hi and welcome to episode 22 of Business Greenhouse TV. Got some solid questions to answer today. You're going to go through some deep stuff with business, deep stuff with, we're going to talk a little bit about the prosperity gospel, and then we're going to do a word of the week. Hey, listen, this is the share show. What I would absolutely love from you, if you would, is to share the show. So, if you're watching it on Facebook, literally hit the share button, add a sentence about what you think about the show, and push it out. One of the things that what I need is I need more people viewing it, more people commenting. For me, that's just what makes me want to do this show, is I want to see more people following the bandwagon. We get so much good feedback about what we cover for Christian business that I just want more people to have access. So would you do me the honor of, watching the show, hitting share, adding something about it, and pushing it out to your people on Facebook? If you're on YouTube, you can just grab the link and push it out, email it, whatever you want to do. But it would just be a massive blessing for me if you would share this show. Let's get straight into it. Michelle, what is our first question?
Jenna Kenny asks, what are the best models of small business duplication that you have experienced and why?
Jenna, great question. So how do we duplicate a small business? There's a bunch of different options. And so I'm going to go through, and then I'm going to pick a couple of them and tell you where I think is probably the best pathway forward. Obviously, the most obvious ones are franchising and licensing. So let's deal with those first. Australia is the franchise capital of the world. America's very close behind. England, not so much. But franchising is an interesting thing. So many people come to me and their aspiration is to franchise their business. But they have this romantic notion about what it's going to be like. And so I kind of want to tell them the truth. I'm thinking about changing the title on my business card to Merchant of Truth, because I end up bursting their bubble. I say, do you realize that you can franchise your business? There's no problem about that. But here's what it's going to look like. You're going to live out of a suitcase for 2 to 3 years, going from every roadshow to franchise meeting to sell and pitch. Many people are going to sign up to be interested. Hardly any are going to have to go pitch, meet with them, fly around the country. You're not going to see your family. You're not going to see your kids. You're living out of a suitcase. And then for the first 5, 6, 10 franchisees, you're not actually making any money because you're not making enough money to put the team in head office to cover them. So you end up babysitting. And the other thing is, you basically have to take your eye off whatever products and service your franchise offers. You become a recruitment and a retention company, okay? That's the core thing. So if you're happy to do that, franchising is a fantastic way to get paid up front to scale your business, okay? But understand that it's not easy, and most get to 1 or 2 or 3 franchisees and go back because it's a really hard ceiling to push through, okay? Licensing is easier, but you've got to be very careful. If you're trying to be a license when you should have been a franchise and you get caught, the penalties are huge. But you can license. The difference between a license and a franchise is very grey in my, when I read the Franchising Code of Conduct, there's really only one sentence and it's very grey. The difference between a license and a franchise is when you give them the system to do the job. Licensing is when you don't. So you're licensing your brand, you're licensing your marks, you're licensing some products, and there's almost a royalty scheme attached to licensing, whereas franchises, you're being paid for the actual franchise operating system. So if you're giving somebody the how to do the job as well as licensing marks, then you're a franchise. If you get caught doing the wrong thing, big penalties. So that's one way to go, franchising and licensing, and there's big pluses and big minuses on both. If you want to take it slower and smaller, you can do like agency or distribution agreements, okay? And they're a good way to start because you're just agreeing to some terms and conditions. That not so much money changes hands. You can tread the water lightly. They're nowhere near as tight. They're very easy to get out of for both parties, okay? But what it is a great way to limit the downside. So when I had this company, I systemized, and we took it into 5 countries around the world, 14 salespeople around the world, I started with distributor agreements because it's just an easy way to get going. And then down the line, I had a clause in mind that we would go to a licensing model at some point. So I had the open door to be able to go down that way later on. But I didn't want to, put the 25 grand up front to get my licensing contracts done at the start. I just wanted to get people out there selling to prove the model and then move to it later. Now, luckily for me, I sold the business before we went to licensing, so I was never there to make that switch. And here's a fourth one that I like that not enough people use, that I'm a big fan of. You actually find people and you go into partnership with them. Okay, so this won't work for every type of business, but let's say I'm a recruitment business. I'm a recruitment company, and somebody comes to me and they say, I want to take your business into a different geographical area. So you could franchise it to them. The problem is if they're not proven in it, they could run your brand in the ground. There's a whole bunch of damage they could do. Maybe they're not the greatest salesperson, in which case they're not going to be profitable, whatever. There's a different way to go. You could go to this person and you can say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set up another company, but we're going to call it the same thing. So another trading entity with the branding is the same branding, but the company is a brand new company. And I'll go in with you 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, 90-10, whatever the split is. I might want more of it up front, so that, if I ever want to pull out of that, I can, as the major shareholder, I can just pull out. And then what I would do is, let's say it was 60-40. I had 60% of the shares. This person had 40. They've got a vested interest to grow the business because they own 40% of it. And then I would set KPIs that when we hit certain levels, I will ratchet back my control. So I'll sell it down to 50-50. I'll sell it down to 60-40 the other way. I'll sell it down to 70-30. And after a period of time, it might get to the point where this person, they've proven themselves, they own 80% of this business. So they can take it gangbusters and get all of the fruit. I have 20%, so I still have a say in my branding and my company. And then you could duplicate that right across Australia, right across the world. It's completely overlooked. It has tax advantages, less controls. You're not under the franchising code of conduct, those sort of things. So it's a great way to limit the damage. You're starting with a very low cost because the agreement's only going to cost you a couple of $1,000s to make, and you can use the same agreement time and time again. But you're taking control at the start because it's unproven with this person, and you're selling your share down over time so that they have a vested interest to go and grow a massive business. What do you get out of it? You get 20% of the profit of that business, 20% of the profit of this one, and the more you set up, you pick up 20% of the profits, or 30, whatever you end up at, of all of those businesses, and they run them because they have a 70% stake to go and make it work, okay? It's just another one that's completely overlooked, and yet I think it's fantastic, okay? It's a more business way of doing it than it is, franchising. It's no money up front for them and so forth, and I just think it's a better way to go. And certainly you can start that way, and then once it's profitable, having the agreement that they then go buy a franchise off you or something, so that you are actually selling them a franchise. But at that point, Very solid question. Hopefully that helps you with your options. And you should always be chasing growth. Always be looking to duplicate staff. You're either growing through marketing or management. So always be looking to duplicate locations, staff, marketing strategies. Duplication, multiplication is the key. Solid question. Michelle, what is question number 2?
Alex Lau asks, what's your take on prosperity gospel preachers such as Joel Osteen, Joyce Meyer, Joseph Prince, T.D. Jakes, and the likes? Where should we draw the line?
Alex Lau, let me give you a big shout out. I'm a massive fan of Alex. He's got C# Productions. They're a branding, marketing, digital agency in Melbourne, doing amazing things down there. So big shout out to you. I took this question because it's a hot button for me. It's an area that I think needs to be addressed, which is why I've decided to do it on the show. My goal here is I'm not going to talk about any of the people that you reference because I run the risk of running them down. I certainly do not want to do that. So I'm not going to talk about the people. I'm going to talk about the culture that has crept in, to modern day Christianity. And I'm going to have to be sensitive because there's a high chance I'm going to lose some viewers and some followers over this answer because I'm going to tell you what I think is the absolute truth, and some of you may be offended. So hopefully you hear me out on this one. Prosperity is biblical. All the way through this Bible, God talks about wanting to prosper people. He wants to bring blessing to people. He wants them to grow as individuals. He wants them to have nice things. But that isn't the gospel. The gospel isn't blessings, okay? The gospel is good news. But there's another whole element. And my whole concern with the prosperity doctrine, the prosperity gospel, is that all we've done is taken one permutation of the Bible and made it the Bible. There's just as many references in here to it being hard, it being lonely, you struggling, you know, hard times beating your character into submission. You know, like Matthew 10:16, he says to the disciples, you'll be thrown into jail, you'll be falsely accused, you'll be persecuted because of my name. Like, where's that in the prosperity doctrine, okay? So I have no problem if we're going to start talking about, you know, wealth and all this stuff and like all this money that you're supposed to have. I have no problem with that, as long as we're balancing it with the other side, which is, you know, it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, it's going to be lonely, you're going to be rejected, you're going to have times when it's all uphill and nothing makes sense. But in amongst that, God is amazing and you will end up with this thing called blessings, okay? So we've got to look at the whole picture. If, you know, so, like, let me just pick on one thing. There's a real culture within televangelists of having corporate jets. I have no problem whatsoever with people having corporate jets. I understand that, you know, it could actually be cheaper and therefore they're being a better steward having a corporate jet than flying, you know, commercial all the time because, you know, of the schedule. Okay, so I get that. I have no problem. The real thing I have a problem with is why they need to mention it in every sermon they ever preach. If the forefront of your testimony is that God gave you a jet, like, how does that help anybody else? How does that help the 99.9% of Christians who will never have a jet? It's like a better thing to, like Paul says, you want to boast? I've been whipped, I've been flogged, I've been thrown on an island. Now let's brag about what God's done in my life. So I have no problem with jets. I have no problem with houses. I have no problem with cars. But let's not make it our testimony. Let's not push this rubbish out in front of the audience and say, God is so amazing because he gives people Bentleys. God is so amazing because of the gospel, the good news. If you end up with a car, if you end up with a jet, that's awesome, but let's not push that as the forefront of the gospel, okay? Use it as a tool. And a jet is just a tool to get the job done. A car is just a tool to get the job done. Let's put them in the background and get on with showing people the real gospel. God loves them, all of the things that we know. That's going to get us a much higher rate of influence than this rubbish like, oh, God's so amazing that I've got 3 jets. Well, whoopee-doo. The rest of the world go, you're way out of the league for me. I don't get it. You're not relatable. Tell me about the stuff that really matters in my life. So where do we draw the line? I think we draw the line at the gospel. We've got to look at the whole thing, you know. When Jesus sent out his disciples, he sent them out with nothing. Do not take an extra tunic. Do not take a coat. Take no money in your purse. Just go. I think there's something to be said for that. Now, am I saying we should all be poor? No. If you know anything about what we're talking about, we should have loads of money. Like, as entrepreneurs, Christian entrepreneurs, we should be making tons of money just flowing into our businesses so that a little bit can come to us, a little bit funds our spiritual covering, and all of this money gets stewarded in such a way that the kingdom grows. I read a scripture when I first got saved. I haven't been able to find it since. It said, the workers are plenty, but the cash is few. It's a bit of a joke, a bit of a play on words. There are so many willing people that want to go and preach the gospel, take the good news, influence culture. It's our job as entrepreneurs to be funding that growth. That's our gift to the kingdom. Yes, we've got to look after ourselves and our next generation. So some of your money has got to go to your family line to look after them. Some of it has got to go to, you know, funding your church. Okay, we've got to get well-funded churches. Some of it's got to go to funding some need in the world. If we all do that, we will have a huge amount of influence and people will look at us and say, you guys are actually contributing to society. So prosperity doctrine is vile. Prosperity itself is biblical. That's why this horrible, vile doctrine has got away with it for so long, because it's founded on a godly principle. But it's just been twisted to the point where it's ugly. Prosperity is evil. Poverty is evil. We're not going to get the job done if we're all poor. You know, like if we're all saying less is more and woe is me and we've got to have nothing to be spiritual, that doesn't get the job done either. So prosperity doesn't, poverty doesn't. There's a line in the middle and it's called stewardship. You are going to be given some resources to steward. Time, people, money, How do you steward those things? If you steward them well, you will get more of it. He will grow that influence to the point where you have heaps. But if you don't steward it well, you're going to have to keep going to learn that lessons. I have no problem with material things, but let's not make it the forefront of our testimony. Let's make our testimony the goodness of God, the grace of God, the mercy of God, and what He's done to our character. That turned into a bit of a rant in the end, so sorry about that. Well, kind of not sorry about that. You know, like if I lose some viewers, I feel like I told the truth. So that makes me happy. Let's go to Word of the Week. All right, this week, I want to go to Judges, okay? And we're going to follow a fella by the name of Gideon. I've got my old Bible back today. There's nothing better than a Bible that's been beaten up and red and colored in and all the dog-eared and brown. You know, it's almost like there's an extra anointing on the Bible that has been through the mill. All right, so today we're going to go to Judges 7:1, and we're going to look at this little excerpt from Gideon. I'm sure you're going to know the story. It goes like this. Early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that's Gideon, poor fella had a shocking name, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men for me to deliver Midian into your hands. In order that Israel may not boast against me that her own strength has saved her, announce now to the people, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back." So there's one little key, not even what we're going to talk about today. Like he doesn't even send those people with fear and trembling into battle. He lets them go. 22,000 people turned and left, leaving 10,000. So 2/3 of the army bail, leaving 10,000 people. But the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will sift them there. If I say this one shall go, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he will not go." So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord said, "Separate those who lap the water with their tongues like a dog from those who kneel to drink." 300 men lapped with their hands, and the rest knelt down on their knees to drink. Okay? So we've got 300 people who are cupping water and lapping it, and the rest who just get down on their knees and bury their head into the water and start drinking. And so the Lord said to Gideon, "With the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and I'll give the Midianites into your hands." So why does that matter? Let's look at the picture. Like one of the things I love about the scriptures is when they are highly practical and we can take it and use it in a business. What was the difference between those who cupped water and lapped it like a dog versus those that got down on their face? These guys are the army. These guys are designed to be on watch all of the time. These are the people who are supposed to have their eyes on the horizon, knowing when is someone going to come and attack us. But they're on the floor, not paying any attention, focused on drinking. Only 300 of them were smart enough to get water, stand up and drink it so they could keep their eyes on the horizon and stay diligent. Okay? Let's bring that into a business setting. You know, how do you go? Are you always on the lookout? Are you always looking for opportunity? Are you always looking for, to be diligent? Or are you one of those people that says, "Oh, God looks after the big picture, and abdicate the responsibility. It's His opportunity to, bless me and get me where I want to go. I'm just going to do what I want in the meantime." It requires us to be diligent. Like those 300 are very, very good at their job. Are you one of the 300? Do you know everything about your business? Do you know everything about your industry? Do you know everything about your products? Are you always learning? Are you being very good at your business? Or are you just okay? Or have you abdicated it to God? He looks after the big picture. I'm just here today. Bless God. As long as I do 5-minute prayer in the morning, we'll be fine. No. You've got to be diligent. Just like the army, they're on the lookout all the time. That is a picture of us. Are we always on the lookout? Are we looking for new opportunities? Are we schooling ourselves on being the best we could be? Are we always improving our knowledge of our industry? Like it's the stuff that matters. God honors, God rewards those diligent people. I mean, it's all the way through Proverbs. We could find another 75 scriptures that talk about God honoring diligence, hard work, focus, dedication, being good, having skills. They're the things that matter. In that scripture, are you like the 300 or are you like the 9,700 who just go with what you want? Interesting question. You might want to take a minute and think about that. Are you super knowledgeable? Are you the most learned person in your industry? Have you taken the time to be diligent in every area of your business? If not, find an area and go and improve it this week. Go on a learn some new things, do some new things, implement some new systems, but whatever you do, be more diligent in your business. By the way, this is the share episode, so would you mind sharing the show? Literally, just hit share, type it in, and punch that out to some people, add your 2 cents worth. It would mean so much to me if you would share the show. I want more people watching it. I'll be massively grateful if you do that for me. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.